study for two bases in Malaysia, and both studies show a very positive result. And the main reason that Aprodex performed well in Southeast Asia, or I can say in many regions, because the developer, they collect the rain gauge data from the local agency of each country. So then they do some interpolation to interpolate the rainfall data. So far, the data is available from 1950 or 60 something to 2007. So it is a very good product for us if you want to study something related to the climate change study. Because climate change study normally we need rainfall data from 1970 something or 60 something to 2005. So another thing is the team in Japan, they are trying to collect, they are collecting the data from different local agencies again, and they are trying to update the data to 2015. So I'm not sure when the data will be released, hopefully in 1 or 2 years. So yeah, just take note on this. And besides that, maybe another data you can consider is satellite data, like TRM and GPM, which is also developed under collaboration between Japan and US. So yeah, I'm planning to apply this data into modeling for the Malaysia region as well, maybe in the future. So let's see what's the result tell. Okay, that's all.
Thank you so much for the response. It's really helpful. So another concern of mine is, can I derive the of course you know the PLABS called that parameter, yeah. I think that's the rate of increase in precipitation per precipitation band. So do you think I can derive the PLABS coefficient using that analysis data?
I'm sure you should be able to do that actually, but again, I would always go back, if there is any field data, always use the ground data the maximum possible extent. When you do not, or when you don't have additional knowledge or additional information, even literature is a good source actually, because sometimes you may be on the rain shadow region actually. You think you are trying to correct it, because these points are 30 kilometers by 30 kilometers. You can totally miss one point here on the other side of the mountain actually. So that means you may be able to miss the whole the rising or the falling limb of your elevation. Thereby, you can totally miss the boat and keep increasing the rainfall while you are in the rain shadow region, for example. So again, look at the local data. If for any reason that's not available, then at least try to understand which side of the mountain is a rain shadow region versus windward region, and then make a decision on that actually, and then try to use your LF rate to adjust actually. As long as you're, I mean, you want to be reasonable. Actually. You don't want to say like I'm increasing, because for example, in Amazonia Basin, we don't have rainfall. At one point, you know, if I had to match the river flow, I have to increase my rainfall up to 10,000 millimeter in one point. So either my observation is totally wrong, or I don't have enough rainfall in the gauge, in the watershed, am I able to reproduce that flow actually. So sometimes you may have to use your stream flow to reverse calculate your rainfall. Okay, so some years you may have data, other years where you have gaps, you may be able to do the reverse engineering and try to do the modeling in the other way around actually. So again, all these things will be over a period of time actually. You can't just take one and then say this is a solution for everybody actually, but it will be unique to individual watershed.
Maybe I can summarize our response on this. Maybe the first thing you have to do is like to collect the ground data. If there is no ground data, you just go to the global graded precipitation product. So if you have both, then just try to compare them. So I did a lot of like rainfall data validation study. So then you can see the correlation, the precipitation detection analysis. There are a lot of things to study about this.
One final thought on that would be, there is a paper that got recently published from Canada. So Moni Ray, she did a project for the entire Alberta state, and she had about 6 different rainfall sources, including local. But the local did not perform very well actually than the global product in her situation actually. Because in her situation it's basically snow dominant river, okay? But the local somehow did not, because when it is a snow dominant river, temperature is equally important as rainfall. Okay. So the global products did a much better job. So she ran about 5 or 6 different precipitation products and temperature products, and then narrowed down her uncertainty, and then chose 1 or 2 up from that 6 products to do her calibration. Rather than taking a wrong rainfall data model or rainfall input and trying to calibrate the model, she tried various different things, then narrowed down which of the rainfall products is reasonable given the observations. Then she went ahead and did further calibration after that actually. So that may be another approach to look into.
Second question, please. If not, I have a lot of questions.
This morning, Dr. Khalid shared with us a whole suite of programs used in Malaysia and in the programs in different parts of the globe. And what's coming up is that the SWAT model is becoming a program of choice, primarily because of its open source, its good documentation, user group, etc., etc. So my question has to do with the limitations of the program, because let's say it becomes so popular that especially for you guys who are promoting it, sometimes what would make you cringe and say, it's not applicable for that situation, or what are the limitations as we maybe for users they might think that it's like a panacea for all the different problems. So what should we be careful at?
There are no limitations.
Wow, that's a pretty wide question, but for one thing, Srini hit on, and then I kind of came back to it when I made a presentation of the Asia overview, is this concept, the term soft data is being used, but it's really looking at a system logically, and I think that's really kind of some first steps that people need to do when they're working with any model, and including SWAT. And there's some good examples of model abuse, even in the literature. And talking about cringing, I mean, I'm actually a co-author in a study. When I went back and looked at it and saw how the parameters had been set, I wasn't the lead modeler, and I thought, oh my, we did some things here that really weren't logical, reasonable. It was outside of that soft data box, to be honest. We didn't catch it in the process. So there it sits in a reputable journal, being cited. And it's not a terrible study. I mean, I think probably most of the results are okay. But if I had to do over it again, I would do it over again. Because some of it was how the nitrate was being driven in the model, because you can do things with SWAT and cheat. One example is in our part of the world, when you've got nitrate moving through a system, most of it's moving in the subsurface, especially if there's these subsurface tile drains. But even if there's not, it tends to move vertically and then move through the subsurface profile. Most of it's not going to move in overland flow. But what happened in that application was that it was kind of moved overland and then converted in stream. You can take in-stream parameters and set them in a way that you can get it to come up with the right level of nitrate at your stream outlet. But it's not actually what's really happening in the system. And so there's myriads of examples like this, to be honest. And I don't know if you guys know off the top of your head, but
I mean, adding what Phil is saying is one needs to understand the data limitation actually. Just because model is there, model is flexible enough to take into account most of your input, but model cannot overcome the data limitation or data assumptions or the scale issue. So you may have a very detailed scale on one input data set, but very coarse like soils. Soils may be 1:5 million scale, where maybe your DM is 1:24,000 scale. So obviously we need to understand the limitation of our inputs And rather than pushing the model to get a right answer, we need to be trying to get better data. Okay? As the data get enriched, I think the model will perform fairly okay. So when we talk about trenching, it's mostly on the data side is where we have more problems actually. So that's what we are trying to help, including developing a global soil database with appropriate properties or global weather data, global land use information. So all these things we are trying to see what are the ways in an incremental manner we can help. And the biggest challenge moving forward would be data sharing and knowledge. That's the most important. One thing is it's easy to go and say, let's say if somebody spent 3 years in collecting the data and analyzing it and whatnot, then if that's going to be locked in his computer, nobody else is going to use that, then we lost 3 years worth of somebody's valuable time here actually. If that data can be shared or maybe made available, either the model or raw data or some form of modified, whatever it is actually. So that's the direction we are heading right now in the SWAT community to see how to bring the community of sharing after the contribution like scientific publications and everything is done. They graduated, they published a paper. Now that model is sitting in somebody's shelf actually. Why not we make that model available to another community so that they could be using that to do whatever they want to do with that model actually. So that's the direction we're heading right now, is sharing.
Well, one specific thing I'll just talk about is plant parameters. And I think this is a big issue for applications in Asia. You know, this model was developed in North America, Europeans picked it up. A lot of the crops, plants are represented, you know, are native to those regions. And then you start porting it out into places like the Philippines, Malaysia, South America, and suddenly you're grappling with a whole new suite of crops. And I've had more than one conversation here about this. Natalia, am I saying your name right? From Colombia. She's trying to simulate this tomato tree crop. When she mentioned this to me, I'm like, what is that? You know, because we have tomato plants in the U.S., right? But a tomato tree, I mean, I never heard of such a thing. But and you know, kind of struggling with this, and there are. You can take existing parameters, adjust them, but I think we've got a lot more need, and in some cases even modifying the code. There was some really nice work done at Purdue University recently to improve representation of miscanthus and switchgrass as bioenergy crops in the model, and they had to actually go in and revise some of the growth algorithms to capture some key processes, and that has been worked back into the standard code. Use it in some of our work, and so you know, as we go forward, I think a lot of these kind of things are going to have to be addressed. One big problem is there's people who have developed crop parameters in different parts of the world, but we're not getting them back into the standard database. And if we can capture a lot more of that, it can help a lot of users.
So maybe I can just summarize the response first. So the first one is the data collection limitation, because SWOT model need a lot of good data. Then most of the data, what I can share with you all about my experience for the Malaysian condition, like for land use and soil data, we need to apply from the Department of Agriculture. So the application process takes time, and we cannot share the data with others. So like especially for the foreigner or people from other country. So another purpose to solve this problem, I think, which is very useful, is by using the satellite data. This is one of the approach to solve the data. Okay, another question, another problem is like for us in Malaysia, in order to collect climate data, we have to pay for it. Means from the meteorological department, we have some kind of data policy. So we have to firstly apply the funding from our government. So if we have a research grant, then we just can buy the data from them. So this also takes time. This is the main reason why I conducted a study that tests the reliability of the open source data in SWOT modeling. So the secondly is about the land use, especially the land use module of the Asia or Southeast Asia region, where there many researchers trying to modify the land use module in the SWAT model, especially from the Japan and China side, the paddy field. Yeah, they are trying to develop this. And unfortunately, I think for the Southeast Asia region, we have no expertise in modifying the module, I mean within the SWAT model. So I'm wondering whether maybe in the future we can have some certain type of the workshop, like a special workshop just for like the land use module modifications. So maybe before the workshop we can try to like have a discussion and try to collect some sample from the field, and we particularly try to modify the land use module on that particular period. So maybe I think this will be very useful for the researcher, especially for the Southeast Asia region. This is just my suggestion.
Thank you so much. And yeah, maybe this point could be continued for us. Yeah, actually, we got the universal data set, and maybe we can focus for the global future and especially the hydrogen aspect. But our other interest, because I'm faculty of agriculture, my interest is how the increase for the food production, and also the maybe it could be quite related with the population increasing, and also the lifestyle and the consumption of the food pattern for that. Maybe those kind of the supply aspects could be influence the water demand. That's meaning the water consumption in the agriculture. So then this is not the database is available currently. If do you have any idea for those kind of the production pattern in the global aspect, do you have any suggestion for to develop the database for the future?
I mean, there are a couple of ways we can approach that actually. It's a very timely question. It's about when we're talking about water scarcity, and also the quality of the water because of the scarcity, and then the population increases and food production, the food preferences are changing now because the middle income overall globally is rising. So all those things are posing some unique challenges that I don't think the governments or the world community is able to grasp or come collectively to address those issues. So one other thing that I would recommend, or one other thing I would like to see is, we started a project, but I did not, it's partially my fault actually, we did not push it hard enough to set up SWAT globally and then at least come up with a baseline hydrology, food production, evapotranspiration, and water consumption, things like that. It's a very basic model that is not going to use full-blown SWOT model. It's called SWOT Light. Okay, so we are developing, it's exactly the SWOT, but it's got only hydrology and sediment. Okay, and then of course crop yield under no stress condition, meaning optimal crop yield. Okay, so we have a simplified model that could work, that can run very fast, and you can run the whole globe within a few hours. Actually, it's not going to take you days and months to run some of these models and things like that. So we need to get that model. I've been working with at least selected researchers, so if there are interest, I can share that initial input, whatever we have set it up, give it to each regional folks, like I've given to one group in China, for example, to model entire China production system. And the same thing for an Indian group, Australian, and South America, and things like that. So we're looking for other places like in Africa or Europe and other places. So if there are people who are interested in it, we'll be able to share that data, and their work would be partly to calibrate and verify that model and publish the work, and then that become the baseline model for running these type of scenarios. That's one approach. The other approach would be, we always have satellite data. We have products like NPP, net primary productivity. So there are ways in which you can relate NPP to the biomass or to the crop yield and whatnot. Because when you talk about food production, we cannot isolate, even though I'm a vegetarian, so I have to still include the animal productions here, right? Yeah. So we need to look at the biomass in terms of grass as well as crops. and then of course the evapotranspiration. So there are some satellite products we can use to come up with a first approximation of how much water we are consuming and how much of food we'll be able to produce in the current environment. Then talk about the future. What happens in the short-term forecast, long-term forecast, or climate change factors you want to put on top of that and things like that. So it's a lot of work need to be done, but I think we can get it done. The only thing is we need a leader or a driver who can be after this actually. Which is I failed to do that, but I hope if somebody wants to step in, I'm more than happy to work with them and take this as a challenge to set up a global SWAT model.
Yes, I want to know how soon can we get something like this in Africa?
No, the Africa model is already there actually. As you know, Karim Abbaspour has already published an Africa model. The entire Africa has been already modeled, calibrated, verified, and so on and so forth actually. The simplified model that I'm talking about is also ready already, but what is not, it's not verified yet. It's not ground truth or it's not calibrated yet actually. So what we're looking for is somebody to take the leadership and have the ground truth data to compare the model outputs and make some adjustments and improve the calibration and develop the baseline model actually. So that's what we're looking for scientists in different regions who may be interested in taking the ownership of that model and developing a calibrated model. Yeah.
I think there are people on ground. I'm one of them.
Okay.
And so, what can you consider as a major weakness of the model?
Major weakness, again, like he was asking about
Usually the sediment yield or water quality. Outside that, getting the correct data.
Yeah, getting the correct data, for example, management. Okay, when you talk about sediment and water quality, land management is extremely important information. And today, Phil can vouch at that actually because we have 3,000 plus publications. Not all of them has got agricultural background or land management background. They are not from agriculture community at all actually. 90, I would say 90, let's say 70 to 80% of them are non-agricultural folks. That may be some engineering or maybe with a different background that may or may not know how or what the management is actually. So mostly they were used for hydrology purpose only. Okay, I would say very few, but I would say maybe what 20-30% of the papers may be in water quality.
I'd say, oh,
Yeah.
we can figure this
Yeah.
out.
Anyway, I think what I'm trying to say is understanding the land management.